Okay, now let's take a look at hyperlinks. This is our index page. I've added some links to it. Now you create links with an anchor tag. Don't get confused with the link tag. The link tag is to link to style sheets or something like that in the head element, not in the body. So you can see we're linked to our style sheet here and commented out the link to Bootstrap. So I've added 3 links here just for testing. Here's the anchor tag. Now, why is it called anchor? In the early days of the web, an anchor was a location on your web page. That term isn't used anymore, but we're left with anchor tags. Now within the anchor tag is this href attribute, and that's where you list the location to link to. Without the href, the a tag is not a hyperlink. You put the text here, whatever you want your link to say. So you can have an absolute URL that links to an external site, or you can have a relative URL that links to another page within your site. Relative URLs leave out the domain portion. They can either start with a /, which means it starts from the root of the domain, or without this /, it's going to be a relative link from the page that you link to. It's good practice to use the root element with the /. Now, if you want to change the way an anchor element looks or behaves, you can set CSS properties directly on the anchor element. So for instance, by default, the text decoration property is set to underline. If you don't want it underlined, you could just change it to none. And you can see it, the underline's all gone. In general, it's a good practice to leave the underline. So an anchor tag has 4 states. It has the link state, which is just normal, nothing's happened to it yet. It's got the visited state, which means you've already clicked on that link before. It's got a hover state, which means the cursor is above it. And it's got the active state, which means the user is actively clicking on it. And it changes the colors here depending on the state. So we all know a hyperlink is normally blue. Let's say we want to change that to another shade of blue, not that kind of bright blue. So let's change it to a softer blue. You can see this unvisited link here. Let's see what it looks like. Save it, Command S. So it's a little bit lighter, but it's still blue, so people know what it means. And it's still underlined, so people understand it's a hyperlink. Now I'm going to click it. This particular link is to the same page. Now notice I'll click on it and hold it. I'm holding it now. You can see it's red because it's in the active state. And when I let go of it, well, we're already at the top of the page, so it's not going to take us anywhere. But now it's visited, and now it's purple. The other thing to notice is while hovering, the cursor changes from the default cursor like this to a pointer. And that's the best practice. There's no real reason to change that. One thing we could do, changing the color to red while clicking it doesn't add a lot of value. Changing it to purple after it's visited, there might be some use to that. It depends. Let's just see what happens if we change this to orange. Save it. So you can see these are all orange. But let's say we want to do away with all these different colors and just leave it one color, regardless of whether it's active or visited or whatever. Let's use this color. Put it here. So if we assign it directly to the anchor element, then we can actually get rid of all this. The cursor is already going to change to a pointer by default. We'll delete this whole thing. Now save it. Okay, so now it's going to be the same color if I'm actively clicking on it or if I've already visited it. So you can see it stays the same color, the blue. And that's the way Bootstrap does it, so if you want to do it the same way, you would just style it this way. Okay, let's get rid of these unnecessary links over here. Save it with Command S. Okay, so each one of our article listings on the home page, the index.html page, is going to have a little summary of the article with the title, and it's going to have a link to the article page. Right now, we just have an article template page, but if this was a live blog, each one of your articles would have a separate file with some kind of slug of the title. Like this might say learnhtml.html. Links within your site don't have the domain name, they just have the path. One other thing to note, there's a class called stretched link. That is something that Bootstrap does that we're not going to replicate in our self-coded version. And what this does is allows you to not only click on this link, but you can click on anywhere in this box. It'll take you to the link destination, which is nice, but not a requirement or anything. Let's test it out. This should go to our article template page. And it does. Let's go to the article template page and scroll down to the bottom where the footer is. So we had just a footer placeholder there. Here I added a couple of links. So one link is a fragment. If the link just starts with a pound sign, then it's a link on the same page and it's to an ID. If there's no ID, then we'll just take you to the top. Let's test it out. Back to top. Yeah, it took us to the top. Now this other link is to a path, but it's just a slash, so that'll take us to the root path. Now we could write index.html, it would be the same. Index.html is the default home page, so we can put it or leave it out. Let's click that, and it worked. Go back. Couple quick comments. This deflex and justify content center. If we take those out, then the alignment is going to be off. You can see it pushes over to the left. I have to find those below here in a flex section. Flex is a little bit of an advanced topic. It's not too advanced, but a little bit. So we're not going to get into it right now, but it relates to alignment within a row or a column. So you have to set the display to flex before you can use it, and then we're justifying the content to the center. And if I save it again, and it's centered again. Actually, let's make a couple quick adjustments. Let's increase the space, and we'll add a class text decoration none, which will remove the underline from the link. There's a text decoration property, and this class sets it to none. Save it with Command S. Yeah, looks a little better. Now we are going to address the table of contents. This is a type of navigation section, and we're going to do the footer navigation on our home page and also the navigation bars. So before we get started with that, so far all of our styles have been strictly mimicking Bootstrap's classes. However, in almost all cases, if you're using Bootstrap, you're going to want to create some of your own custom classes, and that's what we're going to do now. So in order to make this a little easier and cleaner, we're going to put all of our Bootstrap mimicking classes into a separate file, and we're going to leave this styles file for our custom styles. So let's delete all this. Save it. And yeah, all our styles are gone, but don't worry. I've created another style sheet called Mimic Bootstrap. It's got all the same classes that we had before, plus some. I added all the margin and padding utilities possible, so that way you can add them without worrying about whether it's been put in the style sheet or not. And I added a handful of others. This card class is one that Bootstrap uses. It just puts a border around the element and gives that border a radius on the corners. And we'll stop at the Navbar section. One thing we have to do is change our style sheet links. I've actually already created the style sheet link. It's to mimicbootstrap.css, and we need to put it before our custom styles, the styles.css file. So this one can override any Bootstrap classes if we want to do that. Let's save it. Okay, all of our styles are back. That's good. Now let's work on the sidebar. Now, as we're scrolling down, notice one thing. For each heading in our article, we've given it an ID. So this is topic 1. I've added some lorem ipsum in here to fill it out so we can see what it looks like with text. Okay, this next one is subtopic 1A. Each heading has an ID. We're going to use that to link to it. Here's a placeholder sidebar that we've got so far. I've got all the code on the clipboard, so I'll just paste it. First of all, let's get rid of this for now. So here's the sidebar. Just notice that, again, it's an unordered list, and each list item now contains a link to the ID. So when the href starts with a $, it means it's to an element on the page with this ID. Topic 1, subtopic 1A, etc. Now it's not styled yet. Let's save it. This is what it looks like without any styling. And it should be working already. So if I click this, it should take us to article topic 1, and it does. Let's try it again, another one. Yep, here's our table. Okay, let's style it so it looks a little better. Let's take a look at the style sheet. We've got 2 Navbar related classes here. One called nav, one called navlink. In the UL element, we've got the nav class, and within each list item, we've got our anchor tag with the class navlink. Now these are already applied here. Let's comment it out and see what it looks like. Command S to save it. Okay, it looks like a normal unordered list with bullet points, and these look like normal links with the underline. Let's put it back. Okay, it looks pretty good, but there are a few things I don't like about it. It's not lining up with this table of contents here on the side. The links are blue. For a table of contents, I don't want it blue. There's too much space between each item, and I'd like to indent the subtopics and subtopics. So to do that, we're going to have to create our own classes. Now I've created a class called Sidebar, put it up here. It's the parent of the unordered list. It doesn't have to be called Sidebar. You can call it TOC for table of contents or whatever you like. Let's isolate it and see what it does. First of all, let me save it. Now it doesn't look any different because it's collapsed, but if we expand it, make it wider, and uncollapse it, then you'll see these in action. Okay, the position is sticky. So what does that mean? Notice that if we scroll up and down, it'll stop at the top. That's what sticky means. It's got this top of 0.5 rm. That's this margin at the top here. It's got a height of 100 VH. That means it takes up 100% of the vertical height of the screen. Overflow Y is set to auto. Let's see what that means. If I scrunch this up, notice we now have a scroll bar here. If I remove this property, this scroll bar would go away and we just wouldn't see what was below here. Okay, back to the bottom here. Now let's take a look at the next class. So this is a combinator selector. So the navlink class has to be within the sidebar class. So we got the sidebar class up here, and then each one of these anchor tags has a navlink class. So the reason for that combinator is we don't necessarily want to style these navlinks this way outside of the sidebar. So I mentioned that I thought this padding was too much. So here we're reducing it on the top and the bottom. And we're also changing the color to gray. Let's save it. All right, let's do the next one. Here it's a similar thing, except now we're using a pseudo class. So when navlink is in hover state, then we're going to change the text decoration to underline. Let's save it. You can see it's underlined. The last thing we're going to fix is the indentation. So we've added a class in each list item element, li, of L1, L2, or L3. And that'll change the indentation or the padding to the left. L1 or level 1 is going to have 0 padding. L2 is going to have 1 RM. L3 is going to have 2 RM. Let's save it. There we go. Looks a lot better. Now let's move our custom styles out of this Mimic Bootstrap style sheet and into the styles. Save it. Go back and save this. Now let's go over to the index page and create the nav bar at the top. Okay, first thing we'll do is make sure we have our Mimic Bootstrap style sheet linked and that it's ahead of our style sheet. Now here's our navbar placeholder, and here's a replacement that I've already started coding. Let's save it to see it. Okay, here's our placeholder, and here's the beginning of our replacement navbar. So the classes we've added are this navbar class, navbar expand LG, and navbar dark. We're going to ignore this one. Bootstrap has a rather complex navigation bar built around responsiveness. We're not going to duplicate something that complicated. Ours is going to be a little simpler. Let's look at the code. First of all, the navbar dark class will change the color of our links to this grayish color. I don't know if we talked about the RGB format for colors, but it's another way you can format colors. RGB, red, green, blue, and this A alpha is optional. It has to do with how opaque or transparent it is. Anyway, this is a gray. And for our brand, which we'll talk about in a second, it will color it white. Speaking of brand, let's add the brand. Here we have an anchor tag that just links to the top of the page. If you use this # without any ID, it'll take you to the top of the page from wherever you are. Now we've got a few classes, navbar brand, and this flex align item center will center all our items across the navbar. Here's the navbar brand class. It just sets the spacing, makes the font size a little bigger than normal, and removes the underline. Let's save it. And here too. Okay, we're not quite there yet. Let's hide this, give us more room. Now we've got a number of other classes down here. Let's just uncomment the whole thing. Bootstrap is doing all kinds of magic to make their navbar responsive. We don't necessarily need a lot of this, but we'll duplicate it anyway. Let me save it. So the main thing is we fixed the spacing. We zeroed out the margin here in this navbar nav class right here, and we set padding on top and bottom of 0.5 RM in the navbar class right here. Now let's put an actual link in our navbar. So we'll put all our links as an unordered list. We'll set it with the class of navbar nav. MS Auto sets the margin to the left, or the start, to auto. Auto just means it'll take up all the available space. So this will push all your nav links to the right. If you take this out, then all your nav links will be to the left. Then we've got our list item, and within that an anchor tag with the class of navlink, and our href will be the page to open in our site. So remember, we just include the path We'll start with a slash, so it starts at the root, and it'll open the sampleform.html page. We haven't used that for anything yet, but it's there. And in your live site, you won't link to that. Let's save it, Command S. Okay, so you see we got this link here now. Let's click on it, and it works. Okay, let's get rid of this old navbar at the top. And we've got some Bootstrap magic classes here that we're not replicating, but we're going to take a look at Bootstrap's version later. So we'll uncomment them. And let's go down to the footer. Now here's our placeholder footer. And this is going to be our replacement footer. A lot of sites will have a copyright at the bottom. It's not a bad idea, especially if you have articles on there, just to let the world know you're copywriting what you're putting on there. It's also an unordered list, and just like above, the UL has a class of navbar nav, and the anchor tag with the link has a class of navlink. Now we're not actually linking to anything. An anchor tag without an href property is not a link. But we want it to have the same style as the others, so we're just going to use the anchor tag. Let's save it. Okay. A lot of these are the same classes, but there's one difference here. Let me uncomment this. This is some Bootstrap responsive stuff. We'll just hide it. We're using these combinator selectors because the navlink color is going to be slightly different depending on whether we use navbar light or navbar dark. At the top we use navbar dark, and at the bottom we use navbar light. The link is going to be gray in both cases, but the gray is a little bit different. So let's save it and see what it looks like. Okay, there we go. Now let's add another set of nav links. These are going to be social media nav links. Again, we've got an unordered list. We've got a class of navbar nav. We're going to align these to the right. So we'll use MS Auto, margin start auto. And then each link will be in a list item with an anchor tag. And these are all going to be external links. So we put the full URL. You don't have to put social media links. You'd use whichever ones you prefer. Anyway, let's save it. Because the width is so narrow, it's stacking them one on top of the other. We expand it a little bit, then it does that. Let's get rid of our old footer. Save it. That wraps up links and our sidebars and navbars and footers. Now let's take a look at what these would look like using Bootstrap. Okay, let's uncomment some of these Bootstrap only classes. And scroll up to the top, disconnect from our mimic Bootstrap style sheet, and connect to the Bootstrap CDN. Let's scroll up to the top, and let's save this and see what happens. Okay, it looks almost identical. You'll notice Bootstrap's responsive magic going on here. So when the screen is too narrow, it'll hide all the links here, and you just click on this, and they'll appear right on the side here. If you go down to the footer, it does the same thing. We've got all of our social media links down here. Pretty slick. If you want to read all about it, just go to their website, getbootstrap.com. In the docs section, search for Navbar, and they got a pretty long and involved section on their navbars. It's a great Bootstrap feature. Okay, that wraps up this section on links, navigation bars, footers, and sidebars.